Well, let's go to another friend of mine, old friend, or longtime friend. I won't call her an old friend. We'll get past that. We've known each other 25 years, I guess, and she's from Ohio, where she is now. Janet Porter. Hello, Janet.
Hey, Mark. So glad to be with you guys.
We're so glad to have you. Thank you for joining us. I know you're busy. You've got this, what's called the Heartbeat Bill. We've talked about it here a couple of times, going on up in Ohio. Tell us what that's about. What does the bill say, basically, Janet?
I can summarize it in a soundbite. It simply says that if a heartbeat is detected, the baby is protected. That's as simple as that. It basically says that we're not going to ignore the indicator of life that is turned to in hospitals and emergency rooms across this nation. We're actually going to recognize that sign of life when it comes to the unborn, and we're going to legally protect each child with a detectable heartbeat. It's a bill that has already passed the House of Representatives, that has had hearings in the Senate, and all we need now is a vote. And when that happens, we will have the most pro-life law in the nation. It's supported by those of you, and I'm grateful to Johnny, to Troy, to you, Mark, specifically for all of your work and encouragement. But we have actually more supporters for this legislation than any I've seen in the nation. Everybody from the founder of National and International and Ohio Right to Life, Dr. Jack Wilkie, Dr. Dobson, Father Frank Pavone, Tony Perkins, Wendy Wright, name it. It's the who's who in the pro-life movement, and they are all standing united behind this bill. But there are some local obstacles we have yet to overcome. But the good news is we're still fighting. That we're still standing, and we've got until December to get this bill onto the desk of Governor John Kasich, and we are confident that he will sign it once it makes it there.
Well, what we need to do is make sure people understand one of the big obstacles you're facing, and I especially want our listeners and our viewers in Ohio to get on the bandwagon here. One of the problems you've got are Republicans who tell you they're pro-life, right, who are blocking this. And, you know, I'm so sick, Janet. You know, I wrote an article for you up there about this issue because I've had all these conversations with you over this time, and you're doing heroic work that's not one person out of a million could do against the obstacles that you've had. But it's heartbreaking when you have these people who run as pro-lifers, who suck up pro-life votes, who are more than willing to take pro-life money, but when push comes to shove, you can't count on them. And that's what you're experiencing.
And even lead pro-life organizations.
Right, yeah.
You know, that's the key, and I'm looking at a mailing that we're getting set to issue. Now we've got one more meeting with, as you mentioned, Troy. We've got some local Right to Life groups. The president of Ohio Right to Life, and remember, I was the legislative director of Ohio Right to Life. Got a history with that organization. Worked to pass a lot of bills, everything from the Woman's Right to Know law to parental consent to the nation's first ban on partial birth abortion while I was there. But now the guy that runs the place is one that surrounded himself with his buddies, and he's been fighting harder than Planned Parenthood against our bill, giving all these squishy senators a great big excuse not to vote for the most pro-life bill that's ever passed the House of Representatives. So we've got a mailing, and we're going to, after this meeting on Monday, we're planning on making sure that everyone in the district knows where those who ran as pro-lifers really stand in the Senate. Here's what it looks like. It's got a picture of a rhino, which, of course, stands for Republican in name only. We issued a rhino test where people said, are you Republican in name only, or do you actually adhere to the Republican platform that calls for the protection of unborn children? Well, they didn't pass that test. What we've got is now a rhino next to a donkey, and it says, what's the difference between a rhino Republican and a pro-abortion Democrat? Answer, not much. 26,000 babies a year will be just as dead. Right. That's the bottom line. Whether you have an R behind your name or you're a pro-abortion Democrat, babies are still killed brutally by abortion. These are babies whose heartbeats can be detected, who this bill would legally protect if they would only bring it to the floor for a vote.
Well, Janet, the thing that, and I wrote that article for you up there, and the thing that just aggravated me to death, or still does, is the people who say, well, yeah, I'm pro-life and I want to protect babies, but this is just not the right time.
Oh.
If we're 40 years into this deal, when is the right time going to come along?
How many babies do we have to
kill? Know, Dr. Wilkie responded to that, I think, better than anybody. He issued a full-page ad, a letter and a full-page ad that ran several times in the Columbus Dispatch and elsewhere, and it said after 40 years and 54 million dead babies. Don't ask us to wait any longer.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line.
Right.
You know, it's not like we've just come into this thing and say, oh, let's try that incremental, approach where we ask for a millimeter of a loaf of bread and we wonder why all we have is crumbs. No, it's actually 40 years into this. It's time to actually do what we said we were going to do, and that is restore legal protection to children. And yes, we want to protect them from conception, but my thought is we've tried that and we've not yet succeeded. My thought is if we can't carry them all out in one trip, well, let's get as many as we can. And this bill, as Dr. Wilkie said, will protect nearly every child who would otherwise be aborted.
That's beautiful.
And I've got a message to pro-life groups. When they start opposing legislation like this, I want you to look around and see what side of the battle lines you're on. When you're aligning yourself with the folks like Planned Parenthood or NARAL or the Center for Reproductive Rights, if you're standing on the same side as them and opposing a piece of legislation against other pro-life organizations, maybe it's time that you either change your name or switch battle lines.
Yeah, I've often wondered, and we ought to be encouraging these people. Say, look, if you're going to be on the same side as Planned Parenthood, why don't y'all all call a joint press conference?
Yeah.
And sit up there on the dais with them, with the TV cameras rolling, and say, yes, I'm here with Planned Parenthood to oppose this.
It's incomprehensible to say that a pro-life organization is aligning with Planned Parenthood to oppose a piece of pro-life legislation.
Yeah,
You know, Troy, that's the exact point I made when we met with the President of the Senate 2 weeks ago with Mike Ganadakis of Right to Life, who has been the single greatest obstacle to this bill. And he says, how dare you question our motives? And we're really, really pro-life. I said, I'm not questioning motives. I said, but when all of Christendom, 500 leaders and the majority of the local Right to Life groups all stand behind the heartbeat bill, and you're standing next to NARAL, Planned Parenthood, the National Abortion Federation, and the ACLU in opposing it, I question your judgment. I question what it is you're doing because you're standing on the wrong side of this issue. You're on the wrong side of history, and history will show it.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, Janet, the House passed it, right?
It sure did.
Your House of Representatives, and now you're stuck in the Senate.
We are.
Now, do you have a number of people, how many people in that Senate say they are pro-life?
Majority of them do. Well over 20, and all we need is 17 votes to pass it.
So all they have to do is bring it to the floor for a vote, and the President of the Senate is unwilling to bring it to the floor.
And what we know is that even the people who are working behind us, or working against us behind the scenes, they have all said publicly, if it comes to the floor, they will vote for it. Because they'll be forced to. They don't want to be on record voting against the most pro-life bill ever to come before the state Senate. And so I just believe that what we've got to do is keep the pressure on. And what we're going to be doing, I'm looking at a whiteboard right now. It's sort of the war room here. And I'm looking at, right now the top 16 senators who are going to receive these mailings. But what we're going to do is we're going to copy folks in the Republican Party. We're going to copy folks in the Romney campaign. And we're going to say, look, you guys need to win Ohio. No Republican has ever won without winning the state of Ohio. And we're going to see, as Mitt Romney claims he's a pro-lifer, he's got a lot of trust issues, here's a way that he can step in and say, hey, you're pro-life from conception. We got an easy one for you. How about you stand and speak out to be pro-life from the moment when we can hear that baby's heartbeat? How about you support a bill like that? I met with the campaign, and it's interesting that they say, well, I don't know that they'd ever get involved in a states' rights issue. I said, really? Because all of his opponents did. Speaker Gingrich, Senator Santorum, Congresswoman Bachmann, Governor Perry, all solidly stood behind the heartbeat bill. And what we're hoping to do is encourage Governor Romney to do the same thing and say, look, I don't need these postcards going out in Ohio, in all of the voters in the state. This doesn't help me at all. It's time that they maybe step in and actually push this bill through. That's what we're counting on, is for people who, when they talk to the Romney campaign, to say, look, you say you're pro-life, there's some trust issues that a lot of people have. Here's a way. Here's a win-win. You can actually do something for us. Give us a push. Give us a little nudge in the Ohio Senate. Give us some help. And then I believe there'll be a lot of people who say, all right, you help us out, then you're going to see the grassroots activated like never before.
Right.
I like it.
Thanks, Janet. Listen, you stay after it, and we've had how many 10,000 hours of conversations about this.
Quite a few, and I can't wait for the call to tell you that the bill's passed, and when the ink is dry, you're among the very first people who will receive a call. And Troy, grateful for you coming out and speaking at our rally. You know what we're up against, so please keep us in your prayers.
I'll tell you, there's not one person in the United States I would want on this issue more than Janet Folger.
That's right. Janet Porter. She got married.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you, Janet. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you. God bless you guys.
Bye-bye.